Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast, a 3-time award-winning show that aims to motivate and inspire you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you're passionate about adventure, challenge and learning from women who have overcome obstacles and achieved remarkable things, then this is the podcast for you. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m, new episodes go live featuring incredible women who share their stories, insights and tips to help you achieve your dreams and goals. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me with Tough Girl Challenges, give shout outs and recommend other Tough Girl Podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
My name's Elisabeth Ogbonmwan. I am a doctor who specialises in sports and exercise medicine and also a fully qualified GP, a very keen triathlete, runner and swimmer. I'm also a new mum. So I had my daughter 9 weeks ago now, and we live in Manchester.
You are busy. That is a lot of stuff that you are doing. Mum, triathlete, doctor. There's a lot going on. And I've got to imagine that, when you were growing, you must have been sporty. You must have had a sporty childhood.
Yes, definitely. So I was a really keen swimmer growing up. I loved swimming, but that was probably more from the ages of 9, 10, 11 onwards. Even prior to that, I was very active growing up. I would say in my family, you basically had to be active. So that wasn't necessarily organized sport, but lots of walking, playing outside. I did dancing when I was younger. So yeah, I've always done loads.
And did you also manage to balance that while you were studying, sort of doing your A levels, studying to become a doctor? That must have been long hours and quite sort of stressful.
I would say at school, so up to GCSE, which is when I did the main of my swimming, I always found it a really healthy balance to have, because I guess when you're that age, you don't really know anything different to compare it to. But I really enjoyed the structure that I'd go to school, do a full day of school, come back, go training, and then I'd have 1 to 2 hours in the evening after that to do my homework. And for me, that just kind of meant that I was more focused in that time, I think. So it was never, I don't think for me, that much of an issue. And then when I went to sixth form, I actually picked my A levels based on what would take the least amount of homework time so that I could still have time to train, which I don't necessarily know whether that was it meant that I picked the wisest choice of A levels. But, and also to caveat that as well, I travelled an hour to and from my sixth form in taxi. There was a long day with the travel as well. So it probably was a little bit more challenging at that point. And then university, again, I never found it. Actually, to be honest, when I was at university, I probably didn't do as much sport. That was probably a time in my life where, although I kept active, and I did still swim and I did some running, it was nowhere near what I'd done as a teenager or what I would say I do now. So it was probably slightly different then.
When did you get into triathlons and doing doing triathlons?
So that was over COVID, it was over COVID. It was 2020, 2021. And that was really because I'd swum when I was younger. And then for one reason or another, kind of things hadn't really gone, and not to necessarily say as well as I'd wanted, but I'd just sort of stopped doing it at quite the same level. Didn't really want to be doing competitive sport again. And then found running sort of in my mid to late 20s and had a great engine because of all the swimming I'd done as a kid, but just got so injured and then got a bit demoralized with all the injuries. So yeah, started swimming as part of the rehab for one of the injuries. And then while swimming was I actually don't miss just running. Why not give a triathlon a go?
What was the injuries related to? Is there anything that you can pin it back to?
Yeah, so really interesting. Well, it depends what you find interesting. So a lot of foot and ankle and calf problems. And the physio that I was seeing at the time actually worked at British Triathlon. And he said it was really common to see in swimmers who then transitioned into running as adults, because you basically just don't develop the biomechanics in your foot and ankle to be able to take the impact of running. And certainly not in comparison to the aerobic engine that you'd have. So if you've grown up running or grown up doing lots of sport that you're kind of running around in, then you tendon stiffness and everything just develops to be able to cope with that impact. Whereas if you don't really do that and then you suddenly try and do it as an adult, you're just more susceptible to breaking down. So yeah, that was what was happening to me. I just kept getting foot and ankle and calf problems.
Oh, see, I think that is really interesting. Is there like a distance that you can run up to, or a certain amount of running that you can do? And if you push it beyond that, that your body will just like not like it and just be like, no, we're going to like stop now.
Don't know if it's necessarily a specific distance or more like an overall volume. Like, so at the time that this was happening, like I'd done a few marathons, and kind of each one I'd sort of taken a little bit more seriously and kind of committed a little bit more to. But I found that it would take me, I think that volume of running I would find really hard. And it would just take me a long time to recover from. So I sort of felt a bit demoralized with marathons because I just felt like I was in this perpetual cycle of doing a marathon, getting injured, doing a marathon. So I switched to doing some shorter stuff. But in the process of doing that, while I was doing less volume, I upped the intensity and then my body broke down at that. So I think it was kind of a combination of the two. But with what I know now, don't think there's necessarily a specific number. I think it's just the kind of buildup of load and the recovery that you do. And at the time, I just didn't understand that and my body wasn't ready for what I was trying to do.
Were you doing strength and conditioning at the same time that you've been swimming and running? Or is that something that you got into later on?
Definitely got into it later on. Like certainly, like I definitely did some as a child. Like I remember there was a room by the side of the pool and we used to do kind of like once a week, we do an S&C session in there of a lot of like core stuff and things. I did none when I was at university. And then when I first started running, I certainly didn't really do any then. It was only when I started getting the injuries and when I started working with coaches as well that I realised how important the S&C side of things was.
Yeah. So you're a GP, but you're also a sports medicine doctor. Is that right?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So when you go to medical school, everyone comes out and is a doctor and you have to do 2 years of foundation training as a kind of junior doctor. And then beyond that, you can pick a training path. So I picked to do GP first of all. So qualified as a GP, but then wanted to do further training to become a sports doctor because of my own interests and also just feeling a little bit disillusioned by what life as a GP was like. So I essentially went back into being a junior doctor, so back into training again and into a training program. And that's what I'm currently in the process of doing to train to become a consultant in sport and exercise medicine.
So what sort of people do you work? Is it athletes then that you work with, or what does that look like?
Right now, it looks really quite varied. So politics to do with the setup of junior doctor training. A lot of what I've done is being like going back into the hospital and working in A&E or in orthopedics or in public health. And then now I'm more towards the end of my training. It tends to be a combination of working with elite athletes, working in musculoskeletal clinics, and then looking at kind of like how you can improve services locally. So one thing I was doing just before I went on maternity leave was looking to set up a paediatric sports medicine clinic in Manchester where I live. So yeah, it's quite a varied job in terms of what you're doing.
And do you have like a specific area of focus? Because I noticed on your Instagram, there's been like information around like REDs and, menstrual cycles and, and a few like training during like maternity and stuff like that. Do you have an area that you want to focus in on or become even more specialist in?
Yeah, so I'd really like to work with I say female athletes, but I don't really think that's the right word. I think it's women who take part in exercise, which can be at any level. So from those who are elite athletes to women who just want to keep active, to those who are like me and are sort of like at the sub-elite or kind of like high level amateur level and are having issues related to being a woman that are impacting them doing what they want to do. Something I'd also really like to do going forward is kind of encourage participation in women in sport or women in just being active, because we know that is still less than men. So yeah, it's definitely an interest of mine that because of the nature of the job and the way that it works, I have to be fully qualified as a consultant before I can practice that independently. But that's ultimately what I'm working towards.
Oh, fantastic. And when's that going to be?
So a few years yet, unfortunately. It's a long process.
Really? Like, how long does
Yeah.
it take?
Well, I guess it depends. So again, this is like how I've chosen to do my training. So I finished training as a GP 5 years ago now. And then I've done sports medicine part-time, but that's been so I could continue to work as a GP. But part of the reason to continue working as a GP is because it keeps me in the loop in terms of like changes and guidance of like menopause management, contraception, seeing patients with period problems, which you may not necessarily see quite so much on a day-to-day basis within sport, and what I'm doing right now. Before I did GP training, I also did a year of obstetrics and gynecology, and I've done like female related diplomas as part of my GP training as well, female health related diplomas. So it's just trying to like keep it all linked in, really.
I am honestly just in awe of your intelligence. Like all these different things that you are studying, and just how much value that you can add now, but also that you're going to be able to add in the future. It's just so inspiring, at the same time that you're, managing your training as well, because you got to, it's the World Triathlon Championship Series. Is that sort of the highest level that you're at the moment that you've been to?
Yeah, and that's at age group level, so it's the amateur level. But yeah, like I competed in that in 2023. So yeah.
Do you want to talk us through sort of like sort of training at that level? Like, you mentioned that you have worked with a few coaches. How do you? I suppose it's the age old question. Like, how do you balance all of this out? And this was before you were pregnant, and you've had your little baby, so you didn't have well, you probably had a lot more time, and you were getting a lot more sleep. But what does that look like, especially working the type of job that you do and training for 3 disciplines?
I think I had a degree of flexibility in my job at the time because I was doing sports medicine part-time, and then the GP was kind of, because I was like a independent practicing clinician, I could pick and choose shifts for me and days that I worked for me. So, I also, while I am technically a junior doctor or resident doctor, they're now called, I didn't do any on calls. So I had no evening, weekend commitments or anything like that. I think something really important I did is found a coach that I trusted, and then we sat down and like looked at the time that I had across the week, and we made sure that the training that I was doing fitted in with the free time that I felt like I had. I do definitely think that coming from a background of a swimmer and, fitting in 2 sessions a day, and then having been a junior doctor and done the long on-call shifts and the long weekends, I think probably gives just a degree of being used to having really full and busy days, which made that, and also my body being used to doing large volumes of stuff. I would generally say that I found the triathlon training with the bigger volume easier than I found the running training, which I might be spending less time actually physically training, but I felt like my body recovered much better when I was triathlon training because it wasn't quite the impact that comes with running. So yeah, I was doing at the time 3 swims a week, 3 bikes a week, and 3 runs a week. And in that, 1 run would be an interval session, 2 bikes would be an interval session. And then the swims, I tried to get in with a club when I could, or I'd go on my own. And if I went on my own, it gave me the ability to be able to go around what suited me. And we always planned in recovery whenever I needed it. So I never got to a point where I felt completely exhausted in my training. I always was sort of under that, so that I didn't ever feel like I was burning out from it. It was always felt like a manageable amount. And if I needed a recovery week or if I needed a day off, I would always take that. I think I'd learned through previous experience how important that is. And also I think by that stage, my job, my understanding of REDS helped me when I needed to back off as well. And I think just that consistency then helped me to do well.
When you talked about sort of like a recovery week, what did that look like? And were you doing anything sort of specific with regards to recovery, whether that was foam rolling, stretching, yoga, Epsom salt bath? Were you getting like a regular massage, or was it just lying on the couch watching Netflix? What did that recovery look like for you?
So more the latter, really. Like I'd still train, but we'd drop sessions. So I think on general, if I was doing 9 sessions a week normally, I'd drop to 6 or 7, and the volume and intensity of those sessions would drop. So it would really be a genuine, significant drop in the amount of training that I would do. And even though I was doing less training and less intensity, we'd try to, I don't count calories in any way, but the amount of food that I would eat, I'd keep the same so that my body could catch up if it wasn't deficient in any calories. and then use the extra time that you had off to get extra sleep. And like I said, have the extra food. If I could, I'd get a sports massage, but that was definitely not the priority with what I was doing. We always focused more, or still do, because I'm still working with the same coach, on like fueling and recovering from every individual session, not rather than like kind of, jumping to supplements or foam rolling or a massage or whatever it might be as like a quick fix, because you have to be doing everything else right for those bits to make a difference.
And were you training to your menstrual cycle?
No, I've never done that. I was very lucky in that I didn't get very many symptoms with my periods. So I would feel a bit tired, and I'd always be able to tell the day before I was due to come on, like, I might feel a bit heavy or a bit sluggish in a session. And if I'd said to the coach, or if I'd felt like I wanted to change what I was doing to match that, we would have done it, but we wouldn't have done anything specific to match where I was in my cycle.
I loved how you talked about fueling, because I think like fueling and recovery it's so important. And obviously I do completely understand it is obviously very individual, but I'd love to know, what did you find working for you? Were you like meal prepping every week? Were you going quite carb heavy, protein heavy, just a balance of everything? When you were out on the bike, was there anything that you were going for? So were you having like real food, or were you going for gels? What did that fueling look like?
So my husband would say that I don't like protein, which I think is unfair. So I do always eat protein, but I could probably always do with upping my protein a little bit, as I think probably a lot of women are potentially guilty of that. So yes, I would meal prep, and I still do meal prep now. Like on maternity leave, I meal prep so that I'm not having to try and scramble together a meal if the baby's crying. But yeah, I'd meal prep my breakfast and lunches at the start of the week. Me and my husband split the cooking in the evening. And so it was just making sure that I had a good breakfast, a good lunch, and then often a fourth meal as well if I was doing 2 sessions in a day, and then a good evening meal. I'd always have a recovery shake after every session. Actually, at some points, if I was in like a heavier training block, even after easy sessions, like it was just a 30-40 minute run, I'd take a recovery shake. And then for fueling, like on the bike, if I was a turbo session or a longer bike ride or a longer run, I would be eating something every like 20 to 30 minutes. And that would be a combination of gels and real food. So I use the gels from Protein Rebel, who give me some support through supplements and gels. And then I would take out the cereal bars and snacks with me as well. And I would just eat something consistently throughout the bike. If I was doing intervals as well on a long bike ride, I'd potentially have some carb in my drink too. So I'd have the hydration with the carbohydrate in. And the same would be if I was doing a long run, although I'd probably more use gels for a long run, and on the bike as well, having gels and food if I needed it, if I was on the turbo.
Yeah. I will just give a quick shout out to Protein Rebel, because they also provide me with like protein powder and their magnesium and their collagen and do you use their maple syrup gels?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is there's just maple syrup and a little bit of salt, which is just amazing. So it is absorbed like super well, which is fantastic. How do you find it on competition day? Are you like an anxious person? Do you worry about these things? Do you feel quite confident on the start line? Are you quite ready for it? What does that look like? And how does the day go for you? Like, do you have a specific strategy? Are you completion? Are you going for times? Talk us through that.
I would say I'm definitely not a confident person. I think just in life in general, I'm probably not the most confident person. I always think that being a doctor has given me a really healthy balance of like how important these races are. And I remember the first time that I did, it wasn't the first marathon I did actually, but it was the first time I did the London Marathon, and being like really exhausted and just thinking, this is nowhere near as hard as walking around a hospital in the middle of the night, with my bleep going off, and, people being really unwell and feeling really overwhelmed by all the jobs that there is to do. And I think that's just always stuck with me. So whenever I've been on a start line of a race and I've thought, oh gosh, like, am I prepared for this? I've just always thought, you've done harder things than this race is. Or like, you think of patients that you might have seen who have been in really difficult situations, and you realize how lucky you are to be there. So I think I've always tried to use that as a kind of like, just to remind yourself, like, this is something that I do for fun. It's not serious. It's not my job. I'm not getting paid. I think it's very different for elite athletes whose income depends on the work that they're doing or the races that they do. But for us who just do it for fun, then yeah, it's just reminding yourself of that. when the nerves kick in.
So you're on the start line. Mentally, what's going on? What are you saying to yourself? Have you talked with your coach about your strategy? What does that look like?
So we would normally kind of think of like a process goal, I think, particularly with triathlon, because unlike running, and it's been a while since I specifically trained for a running race and stood on the start line and thought, I want to hit X time. But for triathlon, we would often talk about like the processes, and very much for me, like I'm not a very confident cyclist. And so a lot of what we would discuss would be what I was going to do on the bike. And maybe that was a healthy distraction as well, because I knew I'd always get through the swim. Well, I didn't know, but you kind of are pretty confident you're going to get through the swim without too many problems. The biggest worry would be getting my wetsuit off usually. And so then it just, for me, it would be like, what can I do on the bike? And that would depend on the course and whether it's drafting or non-drafting. So, if it was drafting, how was I going to feel confident sitting in a pack, or like making sure that I did sit in the pack and didn't end up cycling all on my own? And if it was non-drafting, just trying to think about my position on the bike and stuff like that. So for me, because that was such a big weakness, or is such a big weakness, that was usually the focus of what we would talk about going into a race, which probably took the pressure off anything else, really, because we weren't necessarily thinking about what position I'd come or what time I might do. It was more about how I would manage the bike ride.
Let's talk about the pregnancy. So, finding out you're pregnant, you're fit, you're a sports medicine doctor, you've done running, swimming, cycling. How did that continue throughout the pregnancy? How was that for you? And were you doing anything different? Did you make any changes?
Yeah, I definitely made quite a lot of changes. I wasn't doing anywhere near the volume I'd been doing once I was pregnant. I knew I wanted to keep fit, and I also knew that it was totally safe and fine for me to keep training during pregnancy, as well as like kind of keep doing sessions and things like that, as long as my body felt comfortable with it. I was really tired in the first trimester, as I'm sure lots of women can relate to, and also had quite bad morning sickness. So that did really limit how much I could do, or certainly meant I had to reduce what I was doing in the first trimester. Once I got into the second trimester, I felt much better. But the other thing to add into last year when I was pregnant is I also was sitting a consultant exam for work. So because I knew I had that at the same time, I'd already decided in my mind that I was going to let the training take a bit of a backseat, because, there are only so many hours in the day and I really needed to pass the exam. So while I felt once I got into the second trimester, I could actually have done a bit more, or even like kind of picked a small goal to work towards, like try to do not a quickish park run or kind of something like that. But because I knew I needed to pass my exam, I just kind of carried on trying to fit something in every day and not worry about working towards a goal in quite the same way. And then it wasn't really until I got towards about 32, 33 weeks, which was, I think maybe was also because it was the point I'd done the exam. So I think my body just went, oh, thank God the exam's out of the way, that I really felt like I started to need to reduce things a little bit more. I just felt tireder and heavier. And my back was sore. I kept doing intervals throughout the whole pregnancy on the bike, but that was it. My running reduced and my swimming just definitely got slower. I loved training when I was pregnant. Again, it put exercise into a whole new perspective, and we knew we were having a girl. And I think the fact that I was having a girl just made me think, I'm taking her on this adventure with me, and like I want to show her what like women are capable of, and like what I'm capable of. So I really enjoyed the whole process.
And you actually you wrote, which I thought was a really sort of thoughtful and an insightful post on your Instagram, which was around pregnancy and body image.
Yeah.
And I'd love you just maybe to share a little bit more about, that stage of things, going from being an athlete to growing a human, and how your body changed and adapted over that time period.
Yeah, I think, we're all at some level, to different extents, body conscious, aren't we? It's like the society that we live in. And obviously as an athlete at any level, you have your body on show. And I think women especially, we're all very conscious of our appearance. And I definitely, I'd put on weight by 6 or 7 weeks of being pregnant. My mother-in-law guessed that I was pregnant at 7 weeks because I looked bigger. And obviously at that point, it wasn't the bump, it was just the hormone fluctuations. And of course, you have days where you find it hard when you look in the mirror and you see yourself and you're much bigger and you've got a big bump and you've got cellulite on your legs, because it was not just the bump that grows, it's everywhere else, or it was for me anyway. But I actually felt really proud of my body, because like you say, you're growing a human. And I think I looked back at photos of myself from before being pregnant and was like, you were often so harsh on yourself, because I'm not the slimmest, skinniest of athletes. It's just not my build. People would often describe me as being strong. But I look back now and I think, gosh, you did look strong and you should be really proud of that. So I think pregnancy really gave me a really deep appreciation for what my body is capable of. And right now I'm kind of just over 2 months postpartum, and I definitely don't look anything like an athlete. I'm still carrying extra body fat since the pregnancy, but it doesn't bother me in a way it would have done before, I guess, because I do feel proud of what my body's been able to do.
You grew a human, and then
Exactly.
like, you've got a little baby girl now. I mean, massive congratulations. And how are you doing being like a new mum and like adapting to this new way of life?
I mean, I love it. It's tough. Like everyone says that, don't they? The first couple of weeks, especially, were very sleep deprived and very tiring. But yeah, I love it. Yeah, really special. And I didn't think I'd imagined that I'd enjoy it as much as I have been doing. I mean, obviously for me, like I'm on maternity leave, so I'm not working at the moment. So that does make things very different. Don't know what it'd be like balancing everything once I'm back at work, but right now I'm not really worrying about that. I'm just enjoying my little girl, really.
And then I don't know if this is an appropriate question to ask. I don't know if to ask any sort of any new mum in terms of getting back to fitness, getting back into training. Do you have a plan for that, or are you like, I'm just not even mentally in that space right now? What does that look like for you as somebody who's obviously, who's trained throughout your whole life and your pregnancy? Like, is there a drive to get back to it, or are you a bit more like, actually, what? I just want to lay on the couch with my baby and cuddle?
Yeah. So actually, before I had her, I had a really open mindset into what it was going to be like coming back into it. And I knew I wanted to get back into racing. Like that was not really even a question in my mind, but I didn't really know what that might look like for the first kind of few months. And so I was quite kind of relaxed about what that might be. But actually, within like a few weeks, I just was like, no, I need to, I really want to get back into this. And I think sometimes like you don't know how you're going to react. And I felt a huge amount of guilt for anyone else looking after her or for leaving her. But I realized for my own mental health how important it was for me to get that time for myself. And so I've actually been doing much more than I expected that I would be doing at this stage. And I'm really enjoying getting back into it. And I mean, I'm not doing 9 sessions a week and I'm not doing the length and volume yet. I'm in 10 weeks since I had her on Thursday, but I'm really enjoying getting back into it. And I think the hour or sometimes 2, mainly it's an hour that I get a day to myself to train at the moment, I think it makes me a better mum. And I feel more confident now that I will be able to build it back up. And I mean, I'm lucky I've got a husband, I've got family nearby that can help out. I've even got friends who are very willing to help out as well. So I think using your support network to give you a break is a really important thing to do. I've also found that she enjoys watching me do, I mean, I haven't done anything like the bike while she's been there, but she's enjoyed watching me do Pilates or home workouts and things like that. So it's getting her involved as well, even at this stage.
One of the things I found so inspiring is that at my gym, there were 2 new mums who used to come in together with the baby carriers. The babies were asleep, they had the white noise on, little cover over the top, and the mums would be working out with the 2 little babies. And I was just thinking, that's just so badass. Like, I love it. The fact that you're continuing to train, do something that you love and that you get, the mental health benefits from as well, and that you're going to enjoy is just incredible. And hopefully, not too personal a question, but a lot of new mums can really sort of suffer with like sort of like pelvic floor, or what is it, in your stomach? Is it stomach sort of like separates a little bit? Did you have to do any sort of like pre-work before you could get back to training with like the stomach and the pelvic floor?
So with the diastasis, which is the stomach, no, I did have a slight diastasis while I was pregnant, but potentially because this is my first pregnancy, I'm not sure. For me personally, it went down really quickly and within like 2 or 3 weeks. So that was never an issue for me. Pelvic floor, yes. And I would say I would wouldn't even really describe what I'm doing as training properly yet. Maybe in the last week or two, it has started to be, but I would definitely say I'm still in the recovery phase and still do pelvic floor exercises every day and have a lot of core and strength work in the program that I'm doing, which is all to help with my pelvic floor and getting it strong. So that when I am running properly and when I am sort of wanting to cycle hard and swim hard, my pelvic floor and core can take it. And that is really important to do. And I knew it was important to do before having a baby, and having now had a baby, I've realized even more, because it's not just kind of your pelvic floor and your core, it's everything else. Well, it has been for me, like the position of your pelvis changes, the load on your back changes. If you're breastfeeding like me, your top of your back becomes tighter and your breasts are heavier. So it's almost like you're working with a whole new body. And so I think it's really important to do work to get that strong again, to cope with the training.
Yeah. I know, brilliant. Thank you so much for talking about that and sharing about that. And I know that you've also got Moving Medicine, a postnatal guide available on your Instagram. I'd love for you to share maybe just a little bit more information about what that is and what people can expect from it.
Yeah. So Moving Medicine is a movement that was started by an organisation called Active Hospitals by sports medicine and the faculty to encourage everybody to be more active. And the return to run postpartum is a part of that. So it's a guide to women, which I worked with Dr. Amal Hassan a few years ago to put together on how to get back into physical activity, namely running and impact activity after having a baby. So it's just going through the stages of recovery that you would expect to go through postpartum.
I like it because it's like the 1 minute conversation, or there's like a 5 minute conversation and the more minute conversation. How does that work?
It's aimed very much at general practitioners, or I guess any health professional. So I mean, obviously we're on Instagram. We're like lots of people on Instagram, really fit, really active, doing lots of stuff. But it's easy to forget that we're still in the minority, and there are still far more people in the country that don't meet physical activity recommendations from the government than do. And so it's a way to sort of introduce the conversation to people who physical activity might not be quite so top of their priority list. And particularly for women, like there's a lot more barriers to entry for women in sport and being active. And those barriers we know go up again after having had a baby, because societal expectations, religious reasons, pressure of looking after the family, time, self-confidence, all of those different things, mental health can all impact how a woman might feel about going out and being active again after she's had a baby. So the idea of the 1 minute, 3 minute, and kind of like a little bit more is just to be able to introduce the idea of a conversation with somebody, perhaps to bring it up in more detail later, or to go through it briefly if they've only got a little bit of time, or if they're fully engaged and you've got the time right there to be able to sit down and have a discussion with them about what they might want to do.
Oh, no, honestly, absolutely fantastic. And you're so right. Like, it's so easy. Like when you're like surrounded by people who are going to the gym all the time, or they're training for events, you just think that everyone's like this, and then you realize, oh, actually no, not everybody gets the same sort of love or enjoyment, or don't have the opportunities. And obviously there's so many other, like you mentioned, there's so many like other barriers to it. You are on social media. Do you want to share your social media links and where people can find more information out about you?
I'm only really on Instagram right now, so my handle is at @the_running_medic, so you can find me there.
Perfect. I will add that link in. And final question, I was going to say, and it's the big one. I would love for you to share your final words of advice, final, words of wisdom for other women, for other mums, triathletes out there, who want to get into sports, want to get more active, want to start training. What advice would you like to share? Please don't say just do it. And you can obviously, you can take that in any direction that you would like. What would you like to say?
I guess I don't feel guilty about wanting to do it. I think as women, we tend to be more self-deprecating and can lack confidence, which is often why we don't necessarily go for races or go for events or take the time for ourselves. And it's don't feel guilty for it, and don't feel like you can't lean on those around you to help out. Talk to those around you and see if they can give you a bit of support or go along with you to a race or look after kids, because it'll make you feel better if you do.
Absolutely. Don't feel guilty. You've got nothing to feel guilty about it. Liz, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing more about your journey. Absolutely inspiring. Massive congratulations on your new baby and best of luck with getting back into the training.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, tribe, how are you all doing? Do you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking that you could be running right now, listening to the Tough Girl podcast. And I hope you're doing a long, slow run and you're listening to my voice to keep your rhythm. First of all, you're doing amazingly well. Well done for getting out there. Well done for showing up. That is half the battle and you're out there doing your run. And what are you training for? It could be a 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathon, ultra marathon, doesn't matter. What matters is that it is a challenge and it is a goal for you. So no comparisons with anything else. Also, big shout out to all the new mums out there. If no one has told you recently, you are doing an amazing job. You've just pushed a baby human I was going to say out of your vagina, which I know is technically true, but sounds so wrong and naughty for me to say it. But honestly, no, in all seriousness, massive congratulations. You're doing an incredible job. Do not put any pressure on yourself to get out there and do things that you do not need to be doing at this point in time. So listen to your body, be kind to yourself, enjoy this wonderful time with your little one. All the runners, if you are running and training and you're not even sure like where to start, what to do, then obviously, you've already taken the first step, which is the correct step, by listening to the Tough Girl podcast, because I have spoken to a lot of runners. I think actually runners is probably who I've spoken to the most. And I have actually broken up into two sections in the resources: runners up to marathon, and then ultra runners. Now, even if you think you're never going to run an ultra, never say never. You can still learn a lot from other women, how they're making it work for them, what's their training, what's their nutrition, how do they fit it into their life. And this is not about comparisons at all. It's about figuring out what's going to work for you. How can you make it work for your life and your situation? So, oh my God, there's just so many runners like that I've spoken to, which is like just amazing. So many women like sharing their stories. Charlotte Bowens, from a health crisis to 50-mile ultramarathon finisher. Jen Scotney, running through the dark, the rise and fall of an ultra runner, a story about resilience, about never giving up and about battling through the night and always believing that there will be a new dawn. Jen Benson, running coach, author and a PhD researcher, the stories behind The Path We Run and her ultramarathon adventure. Love that book as well, The Path We Run. Absolutely amazing. Although it should come with a warning, because it will make you start thinking about wanting to run a 100-miler. Psychologically, it's it is, as well as it being a physical challenge running, it's also a mental battle. Not a battle, I shouldn't use the word battle, a mental challenge, a mental opportunity to show your grit and your resilience. Or metal. So Dr. Kaz Williams has been on the podcast. She's a performance psychologist, a certified running coach and ultra runner, and she's striving to help people discover their metal. Sarah Perry, she's an Innovate ambassador, and she set a record on the Southwest Coast Path, 630 miles, doing a fastest self-supported completion. There's so many different women sharing their amazing stories. And so, please just do go visit toughgirlchallenges.com, click on the resources link, have a scroll through, download a couple of those episodes, especially for your long, slow runs. This sort of talking pace is like a good pace to go at when you're out running. I also need to get running, to be honest. I need to do more outside. I've been not stuck inside. That sounds the wrong word, because I know it's obviously a choice, but I've just been editing. All I've been doing at the moment is I've recorded all my episodes and now I'm editing all of the episodes, and it just takes a lot of time. But I'm sat there thinking I really need to go on a run. I can't remember the last time I went for a hike or a walk. I've been going to the gym loads and I'm lifting heavy weights, and that's going really well. I'm getting so much stronger, but I still need to spend more time outdoors. So that's also on my list of things to do. So please do hold me accountable. Come and check up on me on Instagram at Tough Girl Challenges. I still do share a lot on Instagram, but maybe not as much as I used to. I think just because when I'm home after adventures, my life is very similar. Like nothing really happens. It's not a bad thing, because actually I do need some downtime. It's basically go to the work, go to gym, lie on my bed, edit podcasts, go on social media, try and read books, try and do some yoga, have my protein shakes, try and ensure I get enough protein throughout the day, then back to the gym, back to work, back to editing, just on rotation. So I do sort of get into this sort of bubble, and sometimes I need to break out of it. So I do need to get an adventure an adventure booked in. I need an adventure on the cards. I need an adventure to train for. That's what I need to do. But sorry, I've gone off on a tangent. But so you see, I don't really share a huge amount on Instagram just because nothing's really changed. Like, it's just the same old every day, which is not a bad thing. It's just, I'm just being very consistent with what I'm doing, But yeah, come and check me out at Tough Girl Challenges. You can also watch previous vlogs on the YouTube channel, but I haven't got any more vlogs coming out because I need to edit them at some point. I can't do any more editing. There's too much editing. I do enjoy it when I get into it, but I just haven't managed to get into it at the moment. Anyway, enough about me. Why am I being so chatty? I've got no idea. Thank you so much for listening to the Tough Girl podcast. Really appreciate all your support. If you'd like to support the work I do to increase the amount of female role models in the media, then please do visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast. And you can sign up as a monthly patron or an annual patron. We do it in a whole variety of different currencies, and it really does make a massive difference having your financial support every single month. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon.